The happiest day of my life was supposed to begin with wedding bells. Instead, it began with my father standing in front of 200 guests, calling me a liar. My name is Ashley, and this is the story of how one lie almost destroyed my wedding. Until one unexpected witness walked through the church doors. The morning had been perfect. The church looked like something from a fairy tale. White roses lined the aisle. Golden candles glowed beneath stained glass windows. Soft piano music floated through the air as guests filled every seat. I stood in the bridal suite wearing the wedding dress I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl. My best friend Emma smiled as she adjusted my veil. "You look incredible," I smiled back. For the first time in years, I actually feel happy. She squeezed my hand. "You deserve this." I believed her. After everything life had thrown at me, after losing my mother 5 years earlier, after spending years rebuilding myself, I had finally found someone who loved me exactly as I was. His name was Ethan. Kind, honest, loyal, the complete opposite of my father. Ever since my mother passed away, my father had tried to control every decision I made, where I worked, who I dated, where I lived. When I finally told him I was marrying Ethan, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Over my dead body." I thought he was just angry. I never imagined he had already planned something much worse. 20 minutes before the ceremony, the wedding coordinator knocked on my door. "Ashley, you need to come outside." Her voice was shaking. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I heard shouting. Guests were whispering. Some looked shocked. Others looked disgusted. Then I saw my father standing near the altar. He pointed directly at me. "Stop this wedding!" The entire church froze. My heart started pounding. "What are you doing?" I asked. He looked at every guest before speaking loudly enough for the entire church to hear. "My daughter has been lying to everyone." Gasps filled the room. He pulled a thick envelope from his jacket. "I have proof." People immediately started whispering. Even Ethan looked confused. My father slowly opened the envelope. "If this marriage happens, you'll all regret it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What proof?" I whispered. He looked at me with a cold smile. "The truth you've been hiding." For a moment, I felt completely alone. My hands were shaking. My dream wedding was slipping away right in front of me. Then, the heavy church doors opened. Everyone turned around. A woman in her late 60s walked calmly into the church, carrying a worn leather briefcase. She wasn't dressed like a guest. She wasn't family. But the moment my father saw her, the confidence disappeared from his face. She looked directly at him, then at me, and quietly said, "Ashley, don't worry. I was there the day your father's biggest lie was created." The church became completely silent. No one knew who the woman was. My father, however, looked terrified. He took one step backward. "What? What are you doing here?" he asked. The woman smiled calmly. "I've waited 28 years for this moment." She slowly walked toward the altar, her leather briefcase in one hand. Every guest watched her. Even Ethan stood frozen beside me. I whispered, "Do I know you?" She nodded gently. "My name is Margaret Collins. I was your mother's attorney and her closest friend." I felt my heart skip a beat. "My mother's attorney?" She nodded again. "I promised her that if anyone ever tried to destroy your future with lies, I would tell you the truth." My father's voice suddenly became louder. "Don't listen to her. She's lying." Margaret looked directly at him. "No, Richard. You've lied long enough." The guests exchanged nervous glances. My father held up the envelope. "This contains proof that Ashley has been hiding the truth from Ethan." He pulled out several papers. "They prove she only wants his money." Gasps spread across the church. Ethan looked at me confused. "Ashley, what is he talking about?" Tears filled my eyes. "I don't know. I've never seen those papers before." My father smirked. "Of course you haven't. I kept them safe." Margaret sighed. "Exactly." She placed her briefcase on a nearby table. Then she slowly unlocked it. Inside were dozens of neatly organized folders, old photographs, legal documents, and one sealed envelope. She carefully lifted the envelope. "This is your mother's final letter." My father immediately stepped forward. "You can't open that." Margaret didn't even look at him. "I can, because your wife legally instructed me to." She turned toward the minister. "May I?" The minister nodded. "You have the floor." Margaret opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The room became so quiet that every word echoed through the church. To my daughter Ashley, if you're hearing this, it means your father has finally done what I always feared. I felt my knees weaken. My mother's handwriting. After all these years, Margaret continued reading. Richard has spent years creating lies to control our family. One day he may even try to destroy your happiness. If that day comes, please believe the evidence. Margaret is holding, not the stories your father tells. My father shouted, "Stop reading." No one should hear this. Margaret slowly looked up. Oh, they absolutely should. She reached into the briefcase one more time. This time, she removed a thick folder labeled Confidential Evidence. She placed it on the table. I've protected these documents for 15 years. They don't expose Ashley. She looked directly into my father's eyes. They expose you. The guests stared in complete silence. Then Margaret added one sentence that changed everything. Richard, your biggest secret is about to become public. The church was completely silent. No one dared to speak. Margaret slowly opened the confidential folder. My father stood frozen. His confident smile had disappeared. He knew exactly what was inside. She removed the first document. This, she said, holding it up for everyone to see, is a notarized affidavit signed by Ashley's mother. The minister carefully accepted it. Margaret continued. It states that if Richard ever attempted to stop Ashley's wedding, through lies or manipulation, I was legally authorized to reveal everything. My father shook his head. Those papers are fake. Margaret smiled. Really? She handed the minister another document. This one carries the official court seal. The minister examined it for a moment. Then he looked at the guests. It's authentic. Whispers spread through the church. My father suddenly pointed at me. She's still hiding the truth. Margaret calmly replied. No, Richard. You are. She reached into the folder again and removed several bank statements. For the last 8 years, Richard secretly withdrew money from his late wife's trust. Gasps echoed across the room. My aunt covered her mouth. My uncle stared at my father in disbelief. Margaret continued. More than $2 million disappeared. My father raised his voice. I was managing the family finances. No, Margaret interrupted. You were stealing from your own daughter's inheritance. I couldn't breathe. My inheritance? Margaret looked at me with tears in her eyes. Your mother created that trust for your future, for your education, for your first home, and for your wedding. I felt my legs weaken. Every time my father had told me we couldn't afford college, every time he said there wasn't enough money, it had all been a lie. Then Margaret revealed the final piece of evidence. She held up a small black flash drive. Richard forgot one thing. The security cameras, the church's media technician, connected the drive to the large screen behind the altar. The video began playing. It showed my father's office from 3 weeks earlier. He didn't know the room was recording audio. On the screen, my father was speaking with a private investigator. I don't care if the documents are real, he said. Create something that makes Ashley look dishonest. If Ethan cancels the wedding, she loses everything. The investigator asked. What if someone finds out? My father laughed. They won't. I'll destroy her reputation before anyone believes her. The recording ended. The church fell into complete silence. Ethan slowly turned toward my father. I trusted you. You looked me in the eyes and lied. My father tried to speak. I can explain. Ethan shook his head. No, you planned to destroy the woman I love. He walked over to me and gently took my hand. I don't care what anyone says. I'm marrying Ashley. The guests burst into applause. But Margaret quietly raised one finger. There's still one more truth. She looked directly at my father. And this one will change Ashley's life forever. The applause slowly faded. Every eye in the church was fixed on Margaret. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Ashley, your mother asked me to keep one final secret. My heart raced. What secret? Margaret opened the last envelope in her briefcase. Inside was a legal document with my mother's signature. She carefully handed it to me. I wanted you to receive this. Only on your wedding day. My hands trembled as I unfolded the papers. At the top, in bold letters, were the words, Last Will and Testament. Margaret smiled gently. Your mother never wanted money to define your life, but she wanted to protect your future. She looked toward my father. The moment Richard attempted to stop this wedding through fraud, he automatically lost every right to control the family estate. Gasps echoed through the church. My father froze. No, that's impossible. Margaret calmly handed another document to the minister. It's all legally enforceable. The court approved it years ago. She turned back to me. Ashley, everything your mother left behind. The family home, the investment accounts, the lake house, and the trust fund. They all belong to you now. Tears rolled down my cheeks. It was never about the money. It was about knowing my mother had never stopped believing in me. My father slowly fell to his knees. I made a terrible mistake. I was afraid of losing everything. I looked at him quietly. No, you were afraid of losing control. He lowered his head. For the first time in my life, he had nothing left to say. Ethan gently squeezed my hand. Are you okay? I smiled through my tears. I am now. The minister stepped forward with a warm smile. After everything we've witnessed today, I'd like to ask one question. He looked at us both. Ashley, Ethan, do you still wish to become husband and wife? I looked into Ethan's eyes. Without hesitation, yes. So do I, Ethan replied. The guests stood to their feet. This time, they weren't watching a family fall apart. They were watching love overcome lies. Minutes later, we exchanged our vows. We slipped the rings onto each other's fingers. And for the first time that day, the church was filled with joyful tears instead of painful ones. As we shared our first kiss as husband and wife, the room erupted into applause. A year later, Ethan and I restored my mother's lake house exactly as she had dreamed. Margaret became part of our family, joining us every Sunday for dinner. We created a scholarship in my mother's name to help young women pursue their education, something my father had once tried to take away from me. I eventually forgave my father. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to let his bitterness become part of my future. That day taught me something I'll never forget. A lie can silence the truth for a while, but it can never defeat it forever. And the man who tried to ruin my wedding with one horrible lie ended up exposing himself in front of everyone he wanted to fool.